Hey guys, welcome to my new video. In this video, we will be finalizing the data table interactive project playlist that we have been doing. So this is the part 3 and final video where we would use the last two video concepts from the front end of the data table and API, and we would integrate it, and then this is the final product that we're gonna have. So we can search by using the search query. The search query is also used in the URL, so even if I refresh it, the search query is still maintained. I'm going to use a library called Nux for this one. Apart from that, I have, so if you can see, I have a beautiful loading animation that I have implemented. On top of that, the sorting functionality is also working. I can just sort by risk. I can just look into, let's say, if I can go into the potential risk, I will get all the status with potential risk. If I click on the track, I'll get all the status with track, and if I click on hold, I'll get all the status on hold. So this is working as expected. The sorting, we have also integrated sorting. I can just sort by project name. I can just make it descending. I can just remove the sorting. If I show you, if I make it descending, you can see the data is coming from 100 to 91. I have also implemented the sort on the status, so I can see the archive data now, and also on the estimated cost. So if I just do the estimated cost, I will see the highest estimated cost here. You will see that I have also integrated the data properly with the front end, the project manager data, the last updated nodes, and everything is working as expected. If I just remove this, so you can see the other thing that we have integrated is we have also made this count dynamic. So I can see there are 100 all data, out of which 25 are risk, 16 are on hold, 16 are potential risk, 24 are on track, and 19 on archive. So these all number are dynamic and coming from the database. So this number are also dynamic based on the search query. So if I just search for, let's say, Sam, so Sam is the project manager, so I'll just search for Della. So you would see that Della has 3 projects in all, and out of which one is at risk, one is on track, and one is archived. So if I click on risk, I'll just see particular status project of risk for this particular project manager Della. So everything is working as expected and very smoothly. The last but not the least, as we also implemented the pagination. So if you can see, I have 1 from 10. So if I go into the next page, I will see from 11 to 20. If I go into the next page, I will see from 21 to 30. I can also increase my row per number. I will just make it 20. So you can see that I have 20 data here, and if I make it all the way to 50, I have all the 50 data here from 1 to 50. And if I just click on next, it will take me the data from 51 to 100. The first thing that I would like to do is install all the necessary dependency. So for this data fetching and integration, I'm using 2 major dependency. One is Tanstack query, also known as React query. The other one is Axios. Tanstack query is a library that makes fetching and mutation in React or Next.js project very easy. And Axios is a library that is used for calling the API. It's very similar to how we use fetch in React. So in order to install this library, what I will do is I will head back to my terminal. In the front end folder, I would run this command called pnpm add @tanstack/react query and Axios. Once that command is installed, what we need to do is we need to go into the quick start of the Tanstack query. What we can see is we need to initialize a client query and wrap our whole application around so that Tanstack can work. The issue with this approach with our Next.js is in the layout folder, we have a metadata in which we are passing all the necessary metadata for the application. So this is a server component, not a client component. If I want to make this a client component, it will not work. So let me just show you. If I just run this, and if I just refresh it, everything seems to be working. But if I just make it a client component, you will see it will give me an error saying that we are trying to export metadata from the client component. So we cannot do that. So what we need to do is basically we need to create a new file. I usually create a new file called clientprovider.tsx, and it's most likely copy of the root layout, but I will just rename it to client provider. I don't need metadata, I don't need CSS, I don't need anything else. For now I'll just return the children from here. And in this client provider, what I can do is now I can make it use client. So since this is a entirely new file, I can make it use client, and I usually like to wrap my whole application with this client provider. So I'll just wrap it here, and if I just rerun it, see, now it is working. Now, since we have a new client provider, what we can do is we can head back to the docs for the Tanstack query. I'll just copy this, I'll just paste it here, and I will do a client creation and wrap my whole application with the Tanstack. So basically I'll just return this, and instead of that I'll just return my children, and I don't need other thing. And if I just save it, so this is how we can do the setup for the React query in Next.js. Now that my React query and XJS is set up, the next thing that I usually like to do is basically if I'm using any services or backend API, what I do is I create a folder called services, and in that folder I create an api.ts file. In api.ts file, I just initialize my XJS, and after I initialize my XJS, I just create an API with XJS instance, and in that I pass my base URL. For this, our base URL will be 8000/API, and I will just export this as a default API. And in another folder, what I usually like to do is, let's say for example, if we are creating a service for projects, I'll just create a projects.tsx file. I'll import that API from the API. I'll, let's say, create a get projects, and I'll just, what usually do is I'll just default get projects. In our case it's post and /projects/list. And the last thing that I would like to do is I'll just add an index.tx where I initialize that service. So in our case it's going to be project service from /projects, and I'll just export project service. Let's say I want to fetch this. We will start by doing our initial fetch. Now that we have our setup ready, what I would like to do is in the app, in the page.ts file, I already made this client folder. I would like to import the React query from the query. So I usually do use query, and it imports the use query hook from the Tanstack query. In the use query hook, I will just pass a few things. The first thing that I would like to pass is query key. Query key is basically how do I identify this query. So for our case, it's going to be projects. And the another thing is the query function. In our case, it's going to be projects service.get projects. And what it gives us is it gives us data, is loading, is error. So basically, let me add a condition. So if it is loading, then I will show this. Later I will improve it, but I will show this, and if it gives any error, it will show the error, and if otherwise it will just show the data. I think its fetching is much more better than is loading, because if there is an error, it will still show loading always. But the next thing that I usually do is where we initiated the client provider, I would like to pass few options. Default option for the React query. The first thing is in the queries, I'll just make sure it does not refetch every time on mount on window focus equals to false. So what it's saying is it does not refetch on every window focus. And I also like to give some slate time. So basically slate time represent how, so slate time is usually used for caching purpose in React query. It will store in the cache for 5 minutes for a particular query. After that, it will just remove that cache. So if I just go into my application, I just refresh my application, you will see I can see the loading. I see some error. I need to check this one, why it is doing this way. I think something is happening with the hydration one, but what I can see, it shows loading for some time, and after that the data is being shown. If I go into my console in the terminal for the backend, I can see that the response is coming back with the 200. Everything seems to be working. If I just quickly go into my console, if I just increase it, you will see that I can see the data. So this is the data that I printed out in the page. So this data, I can see I am getting the total count as well as the projects. So these are the default one for now, but this is how we can basically easily do a query with the React query, and it gives us the is fetching, is error, and everything is being properly handled by React query. Now that we have the data being fetched from the React table, the next thing that I would like to do is I will just try to see if I can just render the data. I think I might get few error because there is some misalignment with the data, but I will just fix them. So the first thing that I can see is the project manager is not working. I have to check why it is not working for now. And the next thing is in the resources, it's saying that resources is not a function. I think resources is basically coming up in a different format. So for now, let me just comment this out and then save it. Now this is working, but I need to check why the error came with the project name. Okay, so I think there is still an error with project manager. If I go look into my columns, I passed the project manager as a name instead. What should be done is I should have passed the whole ID of the project manager, and it should just get root.original.project manager. And I think I need to update one thing on the project manager is now the project manager is not a string, but if I just look into my API response, the project manager is actually ID, name, email. We just need ID, name for now. So the first thing is ID and name. So this is the project manager right now. So I'll just create a new interface for export type project manager so that it would be easy to use. ID, name, and email. And I'll just pass it as here, so it should be project manager type. For now, I'll just delete all this data as I don't need it. I'll just keep it as it is, and in the project manager everything is there. I think I also need to update this. I need to make it project manager, and in this I need to make project manager, and not sure is local value. So I'll just as I project manager, so it gives an error because this got aligned with this, but I'll just make it this, and in here I can just pass the project manager dot name, and I think now this will sort out the issue with project manager dot name and project manager dot name. I think avatar fallback should be added back, and if I just save it, rerun this, I don't need this project anymore. The error should be gone. If I just reload my application, I can see that the project manager is being properly sent. All the project name is everything coming up in the right format. The ID is also being properly displayed. The last updated is properly displayed here based on the data that I have. I need to check last updated 2.4. I think I have it on very similar level, so that is why it is showing such thing, but I can easily verify with this. So I think the note is still not updated. What I can do is in the last update date, and I'll just pass last updated. So what am I getting from the database is last updated note. I'll just like to make it a bit more consistent, and I'll just pass it here, last updated note. And what I have to do is in the column I have to make here last updated note equals to row.original.last updated note, and in the project I will also add last updated note as a string because that's what we are getting. Now if I just reload this, I still think it can be seen without the reload, but I just wanted to verify. If you can see, the note is also dynamic. I still got some issue with the resources. I need to check this one. Let's look into that. I think currently if I just console log resources, I think I need to parse this resource. I think it's not in the, yeah, so what I can do is I can just json.parse and resources, it is string unfortunately, and in the column I think I need to also update this, because even though it's should be an array of string, it is not stored as a string. But if I just parse this, if I just rerun it, I think I'll get some error saying that there is I'll just do json.stringify resource and I will see if that works. Okay, so now I have the stringify as well as the parse one. I can, so now const parsed resource, and I think what I would do is I'll just run it through the parse resource, and it's just a string, and I'll just save it. And in the parse resource, it should be the parse resource dot length. I still think it's not working because it's an object, not an array. So I need to convert this into an array in json.array. Now that we can see the data dynamically from my database, the next thing that I would like to implement is search functionality. If I search for it currently, nothing is happening. So how I would like to usually do with the search functionality is I would like to use a library called Nux. So instead of maintaining the search in the state, I would use the URL to maintain the search. So if I go into the documentation, first of all, I need to install this library. I'll just head back to my terminal in the front end. I will just install this library. Once that is installed, what I need to do is I need to wrap my application in the provider. So I can go into my client provider. I'll wrap my application in the Nux adapter. So if I just type Nux adapter and then wrap my application, and if I rerun my application, you will see how it is very simple to use Nux. If I go into basic uses, so it gives us a hook called useQueryState, and then it automatically maintains that in the query. So if I show you, let's say in our example, we need to implement that in the search bar. So I can just copy this, paste it here, and I will just copy again this one and then paste it again here, and let's say this should be search query, and I'll just pass some initial value to it, default value as this, and I'll just name it search query and then set search query. I will integrate this with this particular input, and if my application is running, what you will see is instantly, if I reload my application, if I type something here, you will see my URL is automatically populated after some time, and if I just remove it, it's working. So I can also add a threshold ms of, let's say, 500. So what it will do is it will add a debounce where I don't have to make instant query on each keystroke or changes. Now that we have this implemented, we can integrate this with our projects. So what I can do is I can just copy the same hook, use it here. I don't need this one. In the query hook, I'll just import it from Nux, and then I will pass on it to the key as well as in the projects. So I have passed it on here. So basically, if you pass something here, React query will again run your query if that particular thing changes. And I think I'll just have to fetch it from here. Search query is a string, and I will just pass it as a body like we did with previous this one. So basically in this also we looked into this one, and what I would like to do is here, in the projects, I'll just try to refresh it. So if you can see, the search is automatically applying. So if I search for test, I'll get no result found, and if I just search for group, you'll see it all gives me the result associated with that particular group search. I can also apply the search on a particular project manager name. For example, in our case, if I apply for Donny, I'll see only I get the particular things for the Donny, and I can also do at risk. I can also search for risk, and I'll see all the key matches with particular risk. So this is how I can implement the search functionality. Now that we have the searching functionality working, the next functionality that I would like to implement is the sorting. If I do sorting, you will see that currently it just does sorting on the existing data, but I want to do sorting on all the data from the API itself. So in order to do the sorting, what we need to do is we need to basically get the sorting state out from the data table. Currently the sorting state is in the data table, so I can just pass here sorting and everything, and it would be this. So what I would like to do is I'll just copy this and come up here. I need sorting state here, and I'll just import it, all the necessary things, and once that is implemented, what I would do is I will just pass the sorting here. So sorting would be sorting state, and set sorting would be on chain sorting function, and I'll just pass it through here as well. And once that is passes, what I need to do is I need to add my sorting state here. In the sorting state, I'll just get it from here, and I'll just add on sorting change and then set sorting. So that is working. I'll just do this, and what I can see is now I have the sorting here on the top level. If I just console log it, and if I just refresh it, if I inspect the element, you'll see currently sorting is empty, but I can just do sorting by ID, and it's currently being fetched on the page level. So once I got the sorting here, what I would do is similar to search query. I will pass that sorting on my query key and query function. I'll just make sure I will import it in a proper way. Sorting is sorting state from Tanstack query, and I will pass it in the backend as well. So if I save it, if I rerun it, you'll see the sorting has already started working. It was that simple. So if I just do ascending, it's working. If I do descending, it's working. Same for status. If I do ascending, I will see archived. If I do descending, I'll see at risk. So everything is working. If I just close it, it will just not see me. You will see that I saw at risk, because even though it's so at risk, it is saved as risk in the database. So that is why, but I can also do descending on this one. So everything is working smoothly. The next thing that I would like to implement is the pagination. So since we have the sorting working, so similar to how we did the sorting, we would also do a pagination. So I'll just implement pagination, set pagination, use state, and it will be pagination state from React table, and I can just pass initial. So basically I will just pass initial pagination style. I'll pass it again on pagination and set pagination. In the data table, I'll just import it similar to how we did for this, and then this. For the pagination, what we need to do is we need to first specify manual pagination equals to true, and then we need to pass pagination thing. We don't need an initial state now because we are passing it from the top level. And the last thing that we need to do is on pagination change, we need to add set pagination. And if I just save it, you will see that if I just refresh my screen, the pagination is still not working, but because I also need to pass the total row count, so I cannot get the total row count. Initially I'm getting the row count from this page. So what I would do is I'll just, so I'm getting total count equals to data dot total count or 0, and in the data table it would be total count would be number, it should be a required number because I need it every time, and I need to pass row count as the total count. So if I just save it, if I refresh it, you will see now my pagination is working. So currently, since I have 100 data in my database, and in the if I am only seeing 10 page, then I can see the first of the 10. If I just click on next, I will go into the next page. I have to see why it is not working. Okay, I think it's not working because I might not have passed it here. So even though I have it working here, I need to pass it in the backend level. So similar to how we did for the sorting, I'll pass pagination, pagination, pagination state, and I will also pass here. And if I just refresh my screen, if I just refresh it, you'll see if I go into the next page, the data is coming from the next page from 11 to 20. Go to the next page, it's coming from 20 to 30. If I just increase my page size to 20, it's getting me all the 20 data. If I increase my page size to 50, it's giving me all the 50 data. And yeah, pagination is also working. So if you can see, everything is working in terms of sorting and pagination. Now that we have searching, sorting, and pagination working, the only thing remaining for us would be filtering. So I think for this video, I will just implement one filters, but I would implement in a way that the React table recommend us. So if I go into the documentation, you will see that React filter recommend us to use the column filters, which has a specific syntax called ID and the value. I have already updated my API, which accepts filters. So let's say if I just filter it by on hold, if you can see, it accepts an array and ID is the status and value is on hold. If I do the filters, what I would get is there are 16 data which has on hold status. And if I just also remove this one, I will see I have also implemented accounts where I can get all the counts, so that I can essentially make this as well as dynamic. And if I just do not add any filters, so I will just make it as a status all. If I just save it, you would see that I will get all the 100 counts, and then in the counts I'll get all the different status which has that particular count. So in order to implement that, what I would do is similar to how I did the sorting and pagination. I'll just implement filters and set filters equals to use state. It should be column filters state, and initially it should be an empty array. And for not forgetting it, I always tend to forget it, I will just pass it here, and then I'll just implement filters, and then filters is equals to column filters state, and I'll just save it. Next thing that we need to do is I need to pass that filters here. So I'll just pass filters and set filters. In the data table, I'll just pass filters, set filters, and in here, similar to previously, I'll just add those function. I need to pass that in the table tab because that is where the filter is happening. So I'll just pass filters and then set filters equals to set filters. I don't need the table for now, and I'll just copy this code and I'll just paste it here as well. And in the table, what I would do is I'll just import this filters and set filters, and similar to this, I'll just pass it here. And in table, what I've done is basically I have created a user effect, and what it does is it gets all the other filter which is not equals to status, and if there is any other filter, then it will just append the status as a new object with the active tab. But if there is no other filters, then it will just implement this. So this is how it works. So if I just save it and then rerun my application, you will see that ideally I should have filter working. So if I go to risk, I think it's not working yet. I need to check why is that happening. But if I just go into my backend and go to the terminal, if I just go into the projects, I'll just console log my filters to see if these are working or not. If I just refresh it and then try to refresh it, I go to on hold. I'm still getting filter as an empty array, so I need to check why is that case. I have passed it here. I need to check if this is updated or not. Filters, am I getting the latest filter on the page? Okay, I can get the latest filter here, but I'm still not sending the filters properly. Why is that the case? Yeah, I haven't passed it here. So if I just pass it, I would see if I just reload the application. Now I can see the filters, as well as if I click on hold, I'll only get the status on hold, and if I click on potential risk, I'll only get the status potential risk. Same for risk, and same for archived. So this is how to implement this. The last thing that I need to do is I need to implement the numbering. So if you can see, all has the dummy 10 in them. So now, as I already showed previously, I have something called counts with data.counts. If I just console log it, if I inspect it, console log it, so I have counts here, and what I need to do is I need to pass that counts to this data table so that I can pass it down the road. It should have specific archived, so archive number, on track, on hold, potential risk, yes, and then I'll just pass it here. I'll just assign it a default value just in case, of 0, so that if there is nothing, it just takes 0. And I think I'll just pass it from here, counts is equals to data.count, and in the data table, when I have this count, I need to pass it on the table tab. So I'll just pass it counts here, and as well as here. And in the table tab, what I need to do is I'll just copy what I have done here. So I need to get the number of the counts and everything, and yes, and I'll just pass it as a default value. And so basically, now that we have that, the easiest way is to again pass the table in the item table. And what I have done is similar to previously. I have just I would just use the counts as a default one. I think I break something. I need to check what I breaked, but it should have. So this is for the counts, and this is for this, and this one is this. Yeah, this is working. And here what I have done is I have basically added a logic. If it's valued at all, then it will just combine all the count, but if it is not, then it will just display the counts. So if I just refresh my page, if I go into the all, you would see that I have all this selected. But if I just search for group, you'll see that this dynamically updates the count as well. So risk has only one with the group name, potential risk, on track, and archive there is only 2. So if you can see, these 2 are the only project with name that have group on them, and status is archived. So this is how it should basically work. Yeah, I think this. So if I just search for Della, you will see that Della has 3 total all projects, but 1 is at risk, 1 is on track, and 1 is archived. So this is how the whole search thing work.